This episode of The Feral Mammy is brought to you by Bumps and Banya, supporting you through pregnancy, birth and beyond with antenatal education, hypnobirthing, birth doula care, breastfeeding support and baby sensory classes across the northeast of Ireland, covering Louth, Monaghan, Cavan and Meath. Real preparation, real support, no fluff, just care that actually holds you. Check out bumpsandbanya.ie for more. Hello and welcome back to the Feral Mammy podcast. I'm your host, Aoife Lennon, IBCLC, birth doula and hypnobirthing educator, all-round birth nerd. And today's episode is actually just going to be me talking all around the idea of instinct and how important it is. So, you know the way pregnancy gets talked about, like it's all cravings, swollen ankles, and someone crying over, the latest John Lewis ad. But really what's actually happening is something much, much bigger. And no one ever really sits you down and says it properly. But your brain is changing physically, structurally, and with purpose. There are studies showing that during pregnancy, part of your brain actually shrink slightly. And we refer to it as baby brain, but it's not in a bad way and not in a you're losing your marbles kind of way, but in a refining way. It is a little bit like the way people prune rose bushes and other plants so that they grow stronger. It's the exact same thing. And it actually is called pruning. So the areas involved in empathy, emotional processing, threat detection, these become far more efficient. Why? Why would they become more sensitive and more tuned in? Because they need to be in order to make you a mother. You are being rewired in order to read your baby, to notice the tiny shifts, the different cries, that little pause before the cry, the way their body feels different in your arms, and you just know instinctively that something isn't right. And what's actually happening is that you're becoming essentially a walking, breathing radar system for that little small human that you have spent 9 months growing. And the part that kind of really gets my goat, that really drives up the feral mammy in this, when I think about it, is at that exact same time, like literally moment for moment, that your brain's becoming more intuitive, more responsive, more connected. You're also getting the message from society repeatedly not to trust that. You're just anxious. You're overthinking. Don't pick them up straight away. You'll spoil them. They need to learn. You're building a rod for your own back. So you have this internal system that is finely tuned, biologically designed, centuries, millennia, millions, whatever millions of years is in the making. And then you have all this noise. And that noise, while well-meaning, is very loud and very confident. And most women will start to doubt themselves, not because the instinct's not there, but because it's being talked over. I see this constantly. Mothers who say to me, I just have a feeling, and then immediately follow it up with, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. And that second sentence is not the instinct, that's the conditioning. It's the social conditioning. Because instinct doesn't sound frantic or panicked. It's usually pretty quiet, to be honest, quite steady. It's the voice that says, pick them up, feed them. Something's not quite right here. Stay close. And the more you ignore it, the quieter it gets. Not because it's gone, but because you learn not to listen to it. So part of what we're doing here in this episode is not about teaching you something new, but rather reminding you of something that's already there. Because you were never, ever starting from a baseline of zero. You were already changing, already adapting, already becoming the perfect parent that your baby needs. The goal is never to become the perfect mother. It's to stop overriding the mother that you already are. So then baby arrives, and this is where it starts to get messy, because your baby is hardwired to follow their instinct. But your instinct, while it shows up really, really strongly, like your baby starts to cry and every single part of your body starts going, pick them up. And not in a, maybe you should pick them up. Kind of suggestion way, in a do it right now. Your chest tightens, your milk lets down, your whole body leans towards them. And it's not random, it is biological design. Then somebody says, don't lift them straight away, you'll spoil them, they need to learn to settle. And you're suddenly just stood there, frozen, stuck between what your body is screaming at you to do and what the world is telling you is the right thing to do. And the truth is pretty plain and simple. Newborns don't need training. They need response. They need closeness, regulation. They need you. And your instinct knows that. And this is why feeding your baby on cue feels right. Even if somebody's told you to space the feeds out, wait until they're really hungry and then they'll feed well. It's why putting them down when they're not ready feels like trying to put down an octopus and, wrestling them. It's why when you ignore their cry, it doesn't feel okay if it feels wrong, because it is wrong. And it's not that you're wrong to do that, but it goes against what your gut is telling you to do. And I'm not saying that every hard moment means that something is going wrong. It's just that your internal response to what's going on, that really matters. It's important, because what is happening for so many women is this, and not just in those early newborn days, is that you start off following your instincts, but then bit by bit, you perhaps start to outsource some of the decisions, maybe to apps, to routines, to louder voices. And before you know it, you're asking permission for things you already know, like, oh, should I feed them? Should I pick them up? Should I hold them longer? You don't need permission to mother your baby. I really feel like we've been sold this idea that being instinctual is soft or vague or unreliable, when really it's probably the most evidence-based thing in the room. It is your body. It's just not written in a book. There is a particular instinctive feeling when your child is unwell. And if you know it, you know it. It's not necessarily loud or dramatic, but it's quiet, it's steady, it builds. It's that little sense that something here just isn't right. And when everything looks mostly fine, it could be something like your baby has a great sleep, but they don't usually sleep great. And quite often, mother's instinct in this regard is dismissed. You're probably worrying. You're worrying too much. It's just a virus. You're overreacting. Let's just wait and see. And look, sometimes it is just a virus. Sometimes our nervous system kind of overreacts in a just in case capacity. But the piece that matters here is that instinct is not always about being right. It is about being tuned in, because you mama, are the expert on your child. You know their baseline. You know what the normal cry is, the normal energy, the normal humor, their normal everything. And when something shifts, even slightly or vaguely, you feel it. So what I would like to impart to you today, Mom, is this. You're allowed to act on that. And I feel wrong even giving you permission to do this. You're allowed to go back and ask again and say, no, I'm just not comfortable with this. I don't feel that this has been addressed, or I don't feel that everything is okay here. It's not being dramatic. It's being attuned. I actually remember once saying to a doctor, I said, you probably have your neurotic mother stamp ready to go as soon as I leave here to stick on our notes. And he was like, oh, no. A mother's instinct. So we pay homage, we pay lip service to the role of a mother's instinct. Do we really believe in it? And yeah, of course, there is a difference between anxiety and instinct, because with anxiety, it spirals, it gets louder, it gets faster, it gets more chaotic. And as somebody who suffers and suffered with anxiety, yes, I can totally get how instinct could trigger anxiety. But when does it trigger it? It triggers when it's not listened to. Whereas instinct just calmly repeats itself. Something's just not right here. It taps you on the shoulder and says, just check that once more. And the more you learn to recognize that difference, the more confident that you become listening to it. The goal is not that you're not going to worry. That's part and parcel of becoming a parent, unfortunately. The goal is to not ignore yourself when something feels off. So there is another layer to this as well. And I would like to just preempt this piece by saying that I don't think that neurodivergence is a something wrong, but it is a something different. I am a parent of neurodivergent children. I am very proud of their capacity to do everything. And I'm also very proud of their neurodivergence. Beautiful human beings, and their neurodivergence actually adds to the beauty of them. This is a layer that I really just don't feel is tapped into enough. And that is when you notice the tiniest little things that tell you your child is experiencing the world a little bit differently. Maybe it's something very, very small at first. The way they react to noise, the way that they play, the way that they connect with other children or don't. And you notice it because of course you do. You're the one that's with them in all of these beautiful ordinary moments, the quiet moments, the ones that other people maybe don't see, because you are so well tuned into your kid. And you might say it out loudly. And you might say, I just think there's something different here. And what often comes back is they're grand. What are you talking about? They're grand. Sure, it's just their age. They'll grow out of it. You're overthinking this. And this really tests your instinct in a totally new way. Because it's not one moment, it is a pattern. And it's a pattern that you notice over and over again. That your child's needs are different. Maybe only so slightly, but they are different. And what I would like to say to you today, Mammy, is that you're not imagining what you are constantly observing. You're not. You're advocating of your child, not because you think that there's something wrong, but because you've decided to pay attention. Something, it has triggered an instinct in you to pay attention to that. And you've noticed it's repeating. It means that you're willing to say, even if everyone else is comfortable, I'm going to keep asking questions, because nobody lives inside your child's world the way you do. No one. And yeah, it can feel really, really lonely. It can feel like you are pushing against a system that would prefer if you stayed quiet. But that voice in you, that one that notices, questions, that kind of drives you on, pushes you forward, that's not a problem. That is your guide. So if all of this is true, if your brain is changing and your instincts are there and you can feel when something isn't right, then why do so many of us start doubting ourselves? It is not accidental. We are actually conditioned out of trusting ourselves. And this happens long before we have our children. It's the way we are constantly questioned around our symptoms and kind of underbelieved, undertrusted by the medical profession in general, because we are such an unknown quantity. And we are taught repeatedly, consistently, and yet subtly that someone else knows us better. And if they know us better, they are an expert. They know more than us. They've read books. They know more than us. They're part of a greater system, so they must know more than us. And again, I am absolutely not anti-expertise, not for a second, but there is a very big difference between getting support from an expert and being overridden by an expert. And like I say, women are especially very used to being talked over, to being labeled emotional, dramatic, anxious, when really what we are is very perceptive. There is also an element of fear there, where we fear getting things wrong, where we fear being judged, and we fear being that mommy. So what do? We soften our instincts, we second guess ourselves. We check in with 5 other people before we act, because it feels safer to doubt yourself than to stand in something that other people might question. And here's an uncomfortable truth. A mother that is compliant is far easier to manage than a confident one. And I don't think any of us should be easily managed. For me personally, I want to be rooted in myself. And the only person who should be managing my emotions is me. So how do you rebuild that trust? How do you come back to yourself? How do you allow yourself that again? And not in a fluffy, oh, just believe yourself, kind of way, but in a grounded way, in a real way. It starts really, really small. It starts with maybe noticing your first thought before all the noise rushes in. That tiny moment where you go, I think they need just pausing there, giving yourself a second, getting curious rather than dismissing it, and asking yourself, what if I'm right rather than what if I'm wrong? I've done so much work on mindset and switching my mindset and becoming more positive as I've gone through my adult life. And I would 100% say that tiny little switches in the way that we talk to ourselves, making sure that we are doing more positive self talk. But this is slightly different. This is positive self questioning. This is creating a positive doubt, if such a thing exists. Not thinking to yourself, not jumping to worst case scenario, but jumping to best case scenario. What if I am right? What's my next step? And it doesn't mean that you need to ignore support, expertise, or guidance. It means that you choose the support, expertise, or guidance that strengthens you, not something that replaces or cancels you. The kind of support that says, yes, and, or yes, here's the information, and allows you to decide that you get to make that informed decision, because you are allowed to be both informed and instinctive. You don't have to choose one. And I think maybe the reason I feel so strongly about instinct and women coming back to their instincts is because I feel like I'm learning it all over again. Like, I'm in a totally different season of life. I see new mothers every single day of the week. I love my job. Like, I can't put into words, honestly, how much I love my job, how much I love to see women realize that being responsive to their babies and responsive to their own instincts is so important. Me personally, I'm in a totally different season. And I know I've talked about perimenopause, I'm like a broken record, but it really does have a way of holding a mirror up to your brain. And it also brings about a lot of brain development, brain changes, brain growth, the shifts in pretty much everything, the fog, the emotional edges, and there are moments, of course, where I think, am I right to trust myself? And it's a different kind of motherhood, because now I'm actually a little bit mothering myself as well. Now I'm blessed to still have my mom around, and she's amazing. But what I keep coming back to is this: my body has always been adapting, has always been changing, has always been trying to keep me aligned with what I need, from puberty, from pregnancy, into early motherhood. And even now, as I transition into, I suppose the autumnal stage of my life. And maybe the common thread through all of this is that it's not about being perfect, because I have very much accepted my imperfections. It's not having that sense of certainty. In fact, a little bit of uncertainty, I won't say it's the spice of life, but it keeps things interesting. But it is relationship, and it's the relationship that I have with myself and with my instinct, and with that quiet voice that never ever really left. It just kind of got drowned out sometimes. So if you take anything from this, let it be this: you don't need to become a different kind of mother. You need to come back to the one that you already are. She is not lost. She's just waiting for you to listen. So that is me for this week. If you enjoyed this episode, as always, it means the world to me if you share it on to a friend or leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It genuinely helps other people to find conversations like this. And as always, if this has triggered something for you and you want to do a little bit more work on tapping into who you really are and what your inner voice has to say, because remember, you're the expert on you. Be gentle on yourself. And in the show notes, I will pop some support notes in there as well, places you can reach out to. And until next time, thank you all for listening. And as always, Mama, stay feral.